We speak now to former diplomat and conflict resolution expert, Dr. Kingsley Makhubela. Very good evening to you, Dr. Makhubela, and great to talk to you once again.
Good evening, Tsepiso, and thanks very much for the invitation.
So we have been looking at various social media postings, but also what is coming out of both sides. And it's also trying to unravel what the military strategy is here. There have been social media posts claiming that Iran now has complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. Is this physically possible? As in, is it international strait, so to speak, or does it have the capabilities to do so?
Tsepiso, good evening. You know, Iran has always had this stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has a capacity and the capability really to disrupt shipping agencies around there. As we can see now, since they closed it down, there hasn't been any movement of ships around there. And remember the Strait of Hormuz, Tsepiso, it takes about 17,000 commercial ships that move from there. 20% of the global oil move from there. And there are countries that are linked in terms of exporting that. Qatar exports 83% of their LNG through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, because of the closure, Qatar has shut down completely the production of liquefied gas. And as a result, there's a crisis around the world about the supply of liquefied gas.
And this is as a result of Iran ships that they could face missiles or drones if they attempt to pass. Would they do that? Would they take the risk? Because we understand now that allied countries are saying that they're considering escorting the tankers through it because these are international waterways.
Yeah, well, you know, looking on what happened in the past during the 12-year war and what happened in the Strait of Bab al-Mandab by the Houthis, they were able to shut down the Strait of Bab al-Mandab with limited military capability. Iran has the capability. There are a few ships that are reported to have tried to insist on sailing through, and apparently they've been hit by Iran. Now, Iran has a capacity for underwater missile. They have capacity for long-range missile to disrupt the shipping movement. They can also mine the area to prevent any movement of ships around the area. So they have the capacity to do that. And hence we're seeing the reluctance by a lot of shipping agencies to accept the offer by President Trump to escort their warships. They are not accepting that. But Tsepiso, remember there was a coalition formed by President Trump, or actually by President Biden, to deal with the Houthis. And the Houthis were able actually to dismantle that coalition. That coalition never even became any effective in any way. So what we are looking now at the Strait of Hormuz is a much bigger problem with a lot of military capability. So the Iranians are definitely disrupting that.
And I want to look at what that total control or shutdown would look like, because I believe that there are fast attack boats operating nearby at ports like Bandar Abbas, and that they are using mines, missiles and drones for this anti-access strategy. Are you able to expand a little bit more on this?
You know, Tsepiso, there's been promises made to try to deal with the Iranian stranglehold. But so far, what we've seen since they imposed this restriction, there hasn't been any serious violation of that. If you look at the movement of ships around there, it has drastically gone down. The insurance, actually, for those who are intending to take chances are too high. So what people are doing, or what a lot of shipping agencies are doing, are looking at this, the Cape of Good Hope to move through that, to move their goods and services. But the oil company will not be able. The oil countries, particularly Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, that are using the Strait of Bab al-Mandab, Strait of Hormuz to move their product, won't be able to do that. So it raises serious challenge about it. The only solution, Tsepiso, that I see to resolve this, it's actually once the mutually hating stalemate reaches a certain pinnacle, then you'll find the Iranians will be able to negotiate, and the American and the Israelis will be able to negotiate to ensure the movement of particularly oil ships. Now that you're seeing also the Gulf states are raising concern about what is likely to happen. I mean, you probably have seen the report by the Minister of Energy of Qatar that if this goes on for the next 5 days, the global economy would definitely collapse. And I agree with his assessment. If oil prices are going to hit $200 per barrel, it's a collapse of the global economy, and it's going to take time to recover from this.
So what is the exposure then of African nations, and which in particular, in terms of sectors, are most at risk from this current energy supply cold choking?
You know, we started with South Africa. It's happy. So you recall a few years ago, there was a scandal that South Africa has sold its strategic reserve. Actually, there was corruption involved in the sale of that. So we don't have strategic oil reserve. So if we're going to be hit very hard once the supplies start drying up, the reserves that people are disposing of now, and there's going to be a big demand for this oil. You may have seen the American trying to cut Nigeria. We buy most of our oil, I understand, from Nigeria and some from the Middle East. The Americans are trying to cut Nigeria. So the Americans would definitely take the whole of Nigerian oil, even the one that maybe has been allocated to come to South Africa. They would take that. So we are not going to have any reliable supply of oil during this time. And we won't have the reserve to try to mitigate whatever is going on. So it's not only us. If that happens to South Africa, remember, we supply the oil that we get to the Southern African state, particularly countries like Lesotho, Namibia, and Botswana and Swaziland. They really depend on us. And their price, the oil price actually is pegged to South Africa. They are likely to be hit very hard. Zambia, Zimbabwe. So this is going to create a serious nightmare. Even moving beyond the SADC area, there's going to be serious consequences for this.
So now I want to talk about, and I've been seeing various posts, various analysis of how what Iran is doing is a multifaceted strategic war, that it is, aiming at AWS commercial cloud, that it's also hit Microsoft defense grade clouds. But what does it really mean if we're saying a systemic reprising campaign? How is Iran fashioning out this war? Because there's some who say it may look like it's ineffective, but it's actually hitting so-called low-grade but very strategic points for its bigger plan, and that could involve big tech as a strategy, the global digital economy.
You know, Sepiso, I saw that a few years ago, Iran has apparently hit Amazon plant in the UAE. They have hit Microsoft in Tel Aviv. And last year, actually, they hit the same Microsoft, which is apparently very close to Mossad head office. Mm-hmm. But they are hitting these high-tech technologies because they are very crucial in terms of the artificial intelligence and in terms of the data that they contain about possible targets around Iran and so on. So Iran has been decimating that, aiming at decimating that, and also attacking the radar system to disrupt communication between the warships, between the planes and between the ground, to disrupt identification of targets. So they are very surgical in the identification of what they need to hit for now. Iran is not hitting the same because it's Microsoft or because it's Amazon. It's because they have certain contribution to make in the ongoing conflict. And they're trying to disrupt that communication between the military and these tech giants that are using that. You may have seen last year, the Israelis during the Gaza conflict, they use what they call the gospel artificial intelligence that help them to identify targets within a very short space of time, do analysis of target, and be able to provide some decision-making assistant to military decision makers. The biggest concern that everyone has, particularly in the space of conflict resolution, Tsepiso, it's that if command and control is to be given to artificial intelligence, it will create very disastrous consequences for future battle and future conflicts around the world.
And how does cloud infrastructure then impact on ports, airports, oil terminals, etc.?
I think it's not abrupt that Iran targets some of this infrastructure. So are the Israelis and the Americans, because airports are very important infrastructure for mobility during the conflict. That's one. The ports are helping the navies and so on. So these are surgical and deliberate targets that have been selected by all the disputants in the conflict to try to disrupt mobility, disrupt launch of missiles, and so on. So that's what they're trying to do. Are they succeeding in this? I don't think so. We'll see. Time will tell if there's any form of succeeding, because Iran has proven that they can launch missiles from the desert that are dug deep in the mountains, in the desert. So they're able to launch those missiles. So I don't know if really the destruction of airports, which are serving dual purpose, both for military and civilians, are having a bigger impact for now, but they do disrupt the smooth running of military operations so far.
Thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing your thoughts and insights. As always, Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, he's a former diplomat, but he's also conflict resolution expert.